Okay, welcome to the informational meeting on the town warrant. Just a couple of rules, or not rules, but if you have questions, please go to the microphone. There's a stand here, sign there, so you should be able to see that pretty easily. Identify yourself, your address, and then your question or your statement, and we'll move on from there. We'll try and go through this the same as we did when we had the meeting the other night, and we'll just go article by article. So if there's questions on an article, we'll go through those, and then we'll move on to the next one. So first article is referendum question A, to see if the town will vote to set the date for the first half of taxes due on October 31st, 2025, second half of taxes due on April 30th, 2026, and to set an interest rate for unpaid balances and for abated taxes at 7.5% for the fiscal year. Authorize the tax collector or treasurer to accept prepayments of taxes not yet committed pursuant to 36 MRSA subsection 506 with no interest, and to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any property acquired by the town for non-payment of taxes pursuant to the policies adopted by the select board as may be amended from time to time. The policies to remain consistent with the state statutes and law, and in all cases conveyances to be made by a municipal quitclaim deed. Any questions on that? This one essentially sets the dates for the tax bills to go out.
Fred Kimball at Spiller Hill Road. Just a technical question. The interest rate for unpaid balances, is that based on an annual interest rate, or if somebody doesn't pay $100 of taxes, it's going to be $7.50 added to that, no matter if they're a minute late or a year late? Typically, interest rates are done on an annual basis, so it would be prorated.
The interest rate is it's set based on the state maximums that are allowable, and it would be the 7.5% on the unpaid, regardless of what it's paid.
Whether it's 1 minute late or 2 months late?
Correct.
Are you absolutely certain about that?
Yes.
Because I know other towns do it differently.
That's the way we have done it.
I think it should be clear.
Okay. Other questions on Article 3? Article 4, which is referendum question B, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,125,416 for general government services. That's administration, assessing, code enforcement, employee benefits, general assistance, insurances, recreation, and technology. Questions?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. So as far as Article 4, it's basically a comment that I have, which is on April 1st, Budget Finance Committee unanimously recommended this article. Despite the concern expressed by a committee member that, and I quote, in subsequent years, hopefully we will have a much better interaction with administration with respect to getting information timely and accurate. And the note that I made to myself was that my understanding is that the only other municipal elected group in the town other than the select board is the Budget Finance Committee. So you can understand me at least expressing a little concern when I hear from a portion of the Budget Finance Committee, and I will tell you, I've been at the majority of the meetings, either virtually or in person, of the Budget Finance Committee and the combined Select Board and Budget and Finance Committee. And this was not the only time that I heard some concern on the part of both the Budget Finance Committee and the Select Board that the information was not coming forward in a timely fashion or accurately in some cases. I would be the first one to say that, and I'm not informing anyone up there, that this has not been a tumultuous 24 months in the town, from resignations, turnovers, sick leaves, and delayed audits, which are all extremely challenging. And believe me, I appreciate that. That being said, you know, I'm just speaking as a taxpayer. That's, you know, it sucks to be you, but that's the way it works. And so I guess I just wanted to make that comment and ask, is there anyone up there that's comfortable with the numbers that we have? I will tell you, I had other issues in here that I'm not going to address because I come in and find a preliminary annual report to meet the statutory requirements to have it published prior to the meeting. But in years past, they haven't been, and they've been a source that allows me as a taxpayer to have a better understanding of where my tax dollar goes. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rolf. Don Willard, 149 Spiller Hill Road. I'm hoping that the town manager can provide an overview of the major highlights by department as we go through the warrant articles. It's very difficult, I think, for the public to understand what changes might have occurred. And I'm not talking about the minutiae, I'm talking about the major changes by departmental level. Thank you.
Are you talking about the financial
I'm talking
numbers?
about giving a brief overview of what the changes are by department, or significant initiatives, you know, anything you particularly want to highlight.
Yeah, no, I mean, the biggest thing right now is the employee benefits have been taken out of each individual department and put into Fund 70, which is employee benefits. They were switched over the prior fiscal year, and now they're back. So that's why you see so many changes, like in Article 4, Question B. You'll see dental, health, life, retirement, FICA, all zeroed out, put back into employee benefits, which is why that is also higher. So for budgeting purposes, it'll be a little bit easier
Excuse me, I'm
to
sorry.
understand that.
Isn't that a reversal of a decision that was made to segregate it by individual department about a year ago? And I didn't understand that change, and now it's changing back to how it has always been, which I think is probably prudent, but that's what's happening, right?
Sorry, Don, it's hard to hear you. Are you talking about the changes from last year to this year?
About a year ago,
3 years?
about a year ago, maybe, it was, a decision was made to charge that out by department for some reason, and now you're going back to what it had always been done, how it had always been done, and how it is done in other towns. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank
That
you.
is correct. Brenda, did you have a comment?
I was just agreeing with Don that those charges are going to go back under Fund 70 and group together. It just makes the most sense.
Right?
Stand here.
Brian Walker, Rolfe Road. I was just wondering if you could give us a quick update on the general assistance. It's at 15,000. I think it's been about there. How much of it was allocated? Does the town feel that that's adequate for our needs? Is it too much, too little? Just kind of an update on how that was expended in our past year. Thank you.
As far as actual expenditures, we can't go into specifics on that because GA is handled kind of in a confidential, but keep in mind too, the 15,000 is our portion of it. Then we get state matching funds so the actual figure that gets used is considerably higher. The other thing that comes into play, and the GA officer for the town works with these people on things like that, because if someone does not specifically qualify for GA, we do have the town fund that was established years ago and is got a good chunk of money in there to be able to help people out that way. And it's a good time to advertise the fact that if people want to donate to that fund, they can donate to that fund, because that's kind of that insurance fund that we have that says if someone doesn't meet the full requirements of GA, we can still try and find ways to help them. But as far as did we spend that full 15,000, we were probably fairly close to it. I don't have the exact expenditures there, but as I say, that's the town's portion of it, and then we're getting it used to be 90%, it's now down to I think 70%, and that figure is always a little bit in flux, and we'll see how things finally shake out this year as far as the state budget on how much is going to come back down through for that. But it's one of those that does get looked at on an annual basis. If we're looking at we're constantly pushing that number, then then we would look at increasing that. But it's done well. But there's some pretty strict requirements on who can qualify for GA, and that's when the other fund comes into play. Other questions on referendum B?
Excuse me. During the budget process, we did get a printout of what was spent in February, just to give you a ballpark on what the town paid, and that was $7,204 as of February. So that's heating system, through most of the winter. That doesn't count what the state did.
A referendum question C. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,627,495 for public works.
David Brown, 91 Tenny Hill Road. At our previous meeting, I was pleased. I asked about the cemetery, the North Raymond Road Cemetery, and was pleased to hear from the Public Works that we have a plan in place to renovate that whole fence, which is in bad shape. And I just wanted to bring up, now that spring is here and things are growing out, I've observed that the intersection of Route 85 and 302, right next to the Good Life Market, is very grown in, probably has been for quite a while, has some fairly large young trees that have grown in, and I would like to see that corner to be cut out very well so that people can see, if emergency vehicles and everybody else can really see around that corner. Thanks.
Nathan, did you want to comment on that?
If there's a request, they can email the town office and we'll take a look at it and get it taken care of. I'll take this as a request and we'll get down there and get it cleaned up.
Does that,
Introduce yourself, please.
I'm sorry, Nathan White from Raymond Public Works Department, 30 Spiller Hill.
on that, because 85 is a state road and 302 is a state road, do we pick up that maintenance on that, or is the state?
We would around the lights and stuff. The state won't do anything about it. Okay. They will if you pry them hard enough, but it's easier just to go down and take 10 minutes to cut the brush out of the way.
Okay.
So it'll be taken care of.
Thank you. Other questions under Public Works?
Yes.
Yes, Don?
Can we have a brief overview by department? I mean, once you get into the department head, I guess, issues, maybe Nathan could do that, or Joe could do that, to give us, once again, the major changes and highlights by department. I think it would be helpful to the folks in attendance and who will watch this broadcast later to know what significant changes have been made and/or initiatives. Thank you.
The only big changes in the Public Works budget is the removal of the benefits out of that department. We had an increase in winter sand and an increase in salt. I believe that was, our program has stayed the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Question D, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,445,806 for public safety. Questions? Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. So I guess my question here is a three-part one. I really haven't been able to get the answers to this, and I have been looking in the warrants and the budget. So could you please tell me which budget pays for Cumberland County Sheriff's Services? My sense is possibly Cumberland County tax, but once again, that's not listed anywhere, and I know that was dropped from the warrant because we don't vote on it because we don't have an option to pay it. I've always challenged that when we had open public meetings, saying, well, we do have a choice. And then someone told me, well, then they'll impound your house and you'll go to jail. And I said, no, that'll be the selectmen that happens to. And then my second question is, what is the cost to the taxpayer for that service? And then thirdly, I don't think I've ever heard what exactly the sheriff's commitment is to the town for coverage. Thank you.
So the sheriff's budget falls under the county tax budget. In the past, we voted on it, but it was one of those that said, you know, you could vote on it, but even if you voted no, you still had to pay it. So it was more of a hollow vote. The county tax, actually, have we received the final?
I don't believe we have.
They're always delayed in getting us what the final figure. The county tax figure for last year was $1,044,820. They do not specifically break that down for us. You can go into the county budget and find out, but it'll give you just the sheriff's budget. It won't give you delineated by town.
So if there were a citizens initiative or other aspects of policing in the town, and we wanted to have a comparison, say like what I know most of you know what's recently going on in Sabattis, where they're voting to either eliminate their police department because of the cost and the difficulty with recruitment, and contract for 4 Androscoggin sheriffs that will reside in the town and will provide 24/7 coverage at an estimated half the cost of what they're paying now for a private department. So I'm sure we're all aware of that. But that being the case, how do we compare? If we can extract the numbers and see somehow how much of our county tax is affiliated with our sheriff's coverage? Is that what I'm hearing? We could determine that.
Yeah, and we could also invite the Sheriff Joy into, to give some more information on there. But to say in their budget, what their budget is based on head count, and actually they have open positions they're trying to fill too, which, when you get into looking at, if you contracted, are you contracting with someone that doesn't exist yet? Because the state is still under, has open positions, as does, Wyndham right now has open positions that they've got. The state police have open positions. State police actually, by statute, have to have 7% that are open anyway, just so that they can fill them if they get them. But the fact is, they've got more than a 7% opening that they've got there. So the fact is, none of them are running with full rosters at this point. What we've done, which has helped us as far as visibility and getting the sheriffs in here, is opened up the public safety building and things like that for them to be able to use, so that it makes it convenient for them to be able to come in and keeps that, keeps a visible presence there. They're not obligated to supply a specific number to us. In the past, when we have looked at contracting, they would not guarantee us that if you contract, you're still going to have the same coverage you've got now, plus whatever you contract with. And, human nature says, if they've got coverage and we need to take someone out of there, we're going to take them out of there, then someplace else. So, I mean, it's one of those, it's part of the matrix when you look at, is contracting the best thing to do or whatever, because you may not end up with as much additional coverage as you think, because your contracted coverage, if they've got to go to court, they're not going to backfill that contracted person for you because he's still working. So what you're paying for is him being at court instead of being out on the road where you want him mitigating speeds or things like that. So there's a whole lot of different things there. The town has looked at that contracting side on at least 4 or 5 times that I'm aware of, plus that was the one study that was done back 20 plus years ago on actually creating a police force here, and that was soundly turned down at that point. That was a committee that was led up by Brad Buck, if I remember correctly. So, it's been, it's an ongoing concern. It's an ongoing, but it's one of those that you have to look at all the various elements to see if contracting is actually going to get you the additional that you really want to have.
And I appreciate that, Ralph. I'd say that on the other side of that coin, and it's different, I know, from county to county. My understanding of up in Sabbatics, one of the reasons they're looking at it, and it will be voted on the 9th of June, they voted on it a couple of years back in 2021, and the town turned it down as far as disbanding the police force. But it's back on their warrant, and the reason is that something obviously is changing in that community over 3 or 4 years. So going back to the decade or so when the town last looked at contracting and the like, and voted whether we should have a police force, and I'm not advocating that for a community this size. But I guess what I'm saying is we need to know what it's costing us currently. And I'm getting the sense from your response to my second question, we don't really know what the coverage is. It's very arbitrary, and we don't have a contract that says so many hours, so many offices, or any of that. So it's totally arbitrary. If they're having a problem in Wyndham and they've got their own police force, but they're looking for additional help from Cumberland County, or Cumberland County is on a state road or whatever close by, then they also run into those issues. In Sabatis, the problem with coverage, and the reason they're looking at it again, is because in Androscoggin, they don't have that problem. The Sheriff's Department in Androscoggin is fully staffed. They've had no problems recruiting. Morale is high. Pay is relatively good for the state, and they are able to commit 4 officers that would literally reside in the town and provide 24/7 coverages. And there are other communities right along 302 that are abutting us that have also contracted successfully with Cumberland County. So to say that it's impossible or it doesn't really fill the need or that they've lost coverages, that's speculative. We don't know. No one's looked into it. I know that, speaking on behalf of the comprehensive plan, one of the major issues and concerns that were raised is the traffic on 302 and the traffic on the roads in Raymond and the safety involved. And I don't have to remind anyone in this audience of the tragedy that happened last fall on Egypt Road. I think that's just one of many. I was gratified to hear that at the intersection of North Raymond Road and I believe Spiller Hill, where Ganderbrook is been recommended by the state highway engineer is having modifications, because that's been a chronic problem in town. But I can tell you, it's not the only intersection, and you know that in the town where there's issues. So that's really what I was just asking, as far as what does it cost us? Can we determine the cost? If sometime in the future we want to look at contracting, is there a way to extract that cost and see what would be offset for us doing a contract versus what we pay currently in taxes? So those were my primary concerns. And also just to get a sense of what coverage we have, because I don't think anyone here really knows, because there isn't. There's no commitment. We could have great coverage one day, and we could have almost no coverage the next day. That's my understanding. If they need to go elsewhere, they're elsewhere. Thanks.
Well, Joe, as the town manager, can check into all.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Other questions on Public Works?
Public safety.
Public safety, okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry, public safety.
Put a check on that.
I think Don had a question.
I don't have a question. I probably shouldn't venture this, but I'm going to. And to tell you that this is Peter's question, I guess, and that would be on the Sheriff's Department. There would be no offset for the Sheriff's Department. It would be in addition to the county tax. And as far as coverage, they have on average about 2 deputies in this zone per shift. But we're lucky in a sense, because we're right between the A and B zones, halfway to Portland, halfway to Bridgeton. So as communities go, we probably have as good or better Cumberland County Sheriff's coverage as anybody without a contract. But to say, how many are here depends on what's happening and response times that they might have from that event to here. And in my experience, over 20 years, they've done a very good job in being responsive to Raymond, along with the state police. We often have multiple state police and or sheriff's deputies that live in the town who respond. So they've done a good job, but they're not going to commit to a specific number. You're not going to reduce your county tax to the Sheriff's Department by contracting. You are going to get a guarantee, though, by contracting that you have a deputy in town for a specific number of hours and so forth. And so that's why towns do it. Thank you, and I'll try not to do this again.
Question E, see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to dispose of town-owned personal property with a value not to exceed $75,000. Questions on that? Question F, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to appropriate from undesignated fund balances, surplus, to meet the unanticipated need of the communities that occur during a fiscal year and/or to adjust the tax rate as the Select Board deems advisable in an amount not to exceed $75,000. Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. So I asked this question at the first public meeting on the warrant. And my concern was that we would have enough money according to generally accepted accounting practices, which I believe they set it at somewhere between 5 and 15%. Or an easier way, I believe, for me to understand it, because I'm mathematically challenged, is to say that we need to have in reserve as a town 2 months worth of operating. So that's my understanding. So that would fall somewhere between the 5 and 15%. When I got the information at the first meeting, no one could really give me an accurate number that it was currently in. But I did get a number telling me that as of June 2024, what we had was somewhere in the vicinity of, let's see if I've got it here. $6 million, yeah, $6,733,000. No, that can't be right.
6,198,777.
Thank you. Where'd you get that number?
I have it written down.
Okay. So that was the 2024 number. And what I was assured by the group, the committee was that was answering the questions, is that that was 15%. We were all set with that. So what I did on my own was kind of just do a quick calculation. I took the totals for Article 4, 5, and 6. That was $6,154 and change. I'm sorry, $6,144,787. The total for Article 15, which is debt service, was another $578,840. I know that there's probably other expenses buried in there somehow, but I think in general, what I came away with is that our total operating expenses were a little over $6.5 million. I divided that by 12. I then multiplied it by 2. In order to see what 2 months worth of operating would be for the town. And I came out with $1,122,271 would be what it would cost the town to operate for 2 months. And then I multiplied that number by 15%, and surprising, what I came up with was 16.8%. So we are well within GAAP requirements for having reserve dollars. But I guess my question is, and I wrote this several days ago, due to the lack of an annual report, I had to personally calculate all of that out to determine that we had adequate funding for reserve. And that although this was based on last year's numbers, so once again, I was left questioning, is that still accurate? I just highlighted that as far as in years past, what I was able to do fairly significantly in advance of our town meeting, whether it be open or secret ballot, was to determine that we had adequate amounts of dollars in reserve according to GAAP. And why did I have to go through such a convoluted process on my own to determine that? And my sense was it was because we lacked a town report. I went up yesterday to town hall. My wife went up over a week and a half ago to town and said, can I have a copy of the town report? Didn't have it. Miraculously, this morning, a preliminary town report shows up. And so I guess my question once again is, how could the Budget Finance Committee, the Select Board, go forward in approving these warrant articles and recommending them without actually having this annual report? I know you could extract this and that, and like I say, I witnessed most of the meetings involving the development of the warrant. But I was just incredulous as to, if I had to go through that just to determine if we have enough reserve, what did Budget Finance Committee have to do? What did the Select Board have to do to feel comfortable enough to basically recommend financial warrant articles? Thank you.
Other questions on Article F? Article G, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to transfer funds between appropriation accounts as long as the grand total of all appropriations is not exceeded. Any such transfers to be approved only at a properly called public meeting of the Select Board. Questions on that? Referendum question H, to see if the town will, see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to allow town staff to make applications for and execute any documents related to a grant, accept or reject grants, donations, and/or gifts of money to the town of Raymond, and authorize the expenditure of monies awarded, donated, and/or gifted for the purposes specified in the grants, donations, and/or gifts. Any Questions in regards to question H? Question I, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to appropriate from undesignated fund balance surplus to reduce the property tax commitment as the Select Board deems advisable in an amount not to exceed $700,000. Questions? Question J, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $511,177 from the tax increment of the Pipeline Route 302 Tax Increment Financing District for the fiscal year 25-26 projects proposed in the Tax Increment Financing District Development Program in the Appendix 1. Questions on the TIF? Question K, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Tasseltop Enterprise Fund the amount of $144,500 for the administration of activities at the park and to allocate all revenues generated by the park operations to be recorded in and retained by the Tasseltop Park Enterprise Fund. Questions on Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. So I asked this question at the first public hearing, and the day after that, and I was appreciative, I received a document that basically was titled Budgeting and Fund Structure of Raymond Parks and Recreation. My understanding is that this was provided to the Budget Finance Committee for review in answer to some of their questions on how the funding took place. So I appreciate having that forwarded to me. Unfortunately, my question at the first public hearing was what I thought a relatively simple one, but in discussing it with the panel, I determined it was a little more complex than I had thought. But my basic question was, does the Park and Recreation Department self-fund itself negatively, positively, or are they in a neutral state? And I would just read from the document I received. The Special Revenue Fund is structured to ensure financial stability. Program fees and membership fees are collected into designated revenue accounts, each of which has a corresponding expense account. And our primary goal is to break even or generate a minimal surplus, which allows us to accommodate unforeseen costs and plans for future equipment replacements and programs. When I looked at the attached schedule of expenses, there's a lot of information here. However, there is no expense side of this. It reports fees, account numbers, account names, and current enrollments, of which if I wanted to, and once again being mathematically challenged, I could multiply the fee by the number of the current individuals enrolled, and that would give me some idea of what the revenue side was. Once again, going back to my experience in the past with the annual report, that information is all embedded in there, and I assume, although I haven't had a chance since I just got it this morning to go through this preliminary annual report, I'll see some more of that detail. Once again, and to basically borrow a phrase from my wife, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I would never beat a dead horse. I wouldn't beat any horse. But as far as this issue is concerned, I think it's reasonable to make that comment that there just does not seem to have been in this last budget cycle information that informs the taxpayer in an easily digested format where their tax dollars are going. And I say that without in any way inferring that the Select Board and or the Budget Finance Committee have not tried their best to do that. And I appreciate it. I believe the community does as well. But if there is a simple answer to my question, I'd definitely love to hear it, and I do plan on kind of looking back at the preliminary report. And then, of course, I will look again when the final report is available. Thank you.
Yeah, so, Peter, so in those special revenues accounts, there is in the budget worksheet the actuals of our expenses plus the revenues brought in that fiscal year. So that is calculated in the budget worksheet. So what you're probably asking is more of a kind of like a pictograph or something of what we've expensed and what we've brought in for revenues for that current year. Is kind of simply put it into a, not into like the whole budget worksheet, but a presentation of how we're doing fiscally in those certain funds. So again, we have 3 different ones, which makes it a little bit difficult. We have the special revenues, which is just the programs, events, anything like that, which we've moved from 43, which was in the general fund, to its own special revenues account, which is now 15. So we have all those totals, and they are in the budget worksheet.
And Joe, I appreciate that. I guess my challenge is having, once again, attended either, virtually, but in person, many of the Budget Finance Committee, Select Board member combined meetings and the individual meetings. Budget worksheet, when you're in the audience, you don't have access to that. I don't know where I would pull that budget worksheet up, you know? So once again, accessibility.
Yeah, we can work on reporting it, right? Like you want more of the report.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of
Yeah.
graphics. If you want to just give me a pie chart, or you want to give me some other type of graphic, you know, that's my speed. I can certainly understand that. In doing my budgeting in my career, generally what I had was a monthly flow chart that basically would tell me what I had budgeted for the year, where I was as far as, am I positive in that account, am I negative in that account, you know, and that was enough for me. You know, I had a nice little budget finance person where I worked that basically said, if you're within 5%, you're doing a great job, and you don't have to give me any justification whatsoever. If you're over 5%, either positive or negative, though, I'd like you as a manager to be able to explain to me why.
Yep. No, that's fair. Profit, we can create a profit and loss spreadsheet or graph and present those at either budget finance or during the budget time. So thank you for that.
I'd like to make a comment on this. Peter has in fact been at every meeting. Anyone who doesn't know or doesn't watch the show, he's very thorough with his questions, and he's also very observant in what kind of a budget process it was this year. We had a town manager, the previous town manager, quit in the middle of it, gave a notice just before the March meeting. Of course, we start the budget process in earnest in February. And so there were sheets that showed up at every meeting, correcting previous sheets that we received. And it made it very difficult on the budget process. And the fact is, when it come right down to the wire of getting it printed out, whether it be the annual report or the warrants, we were under the gun. And I think you know that, Peter, and that's why you're asking these questions. Nothing was easy, not for anyone on this board or the budget committee, but I think in earnest, we did the best we could with the situation we had. And anyone who watched the meetings knew there were concerns. The fact that the overall budget, I think, was 4.3% was why I felt comfortable. And because the department heads didn't look like they were putting in a lot of extras on anything that we could see with the questions. So with all due diligence in the time period we had, I think we did the very best we could for the citizens, at least speaking for myself.
Brian?
Brian Walker, 12 Rolfe Road. I don't want to beat a dead horse either. And I'm glad, Dennis, that you just gave the comments you did, because it's a good reminder that there's been a fair amount of transition and upheaval in the past year. And so obviously there's exacerbating situations that happen. As I look around, I'm glad that everybody came who did. maybe you had nothing better to do on a rainy Saturday morning, so thank goodness it wasn't sunny out. But we as a town are finding, I think, it more difficult to kind of coalesce our community and be what we are, which is a great community. I think, Joe, in your new role, if you can think about how do I re-engage the people in this town, and I think, you know, your survey on this building is a perfect example of that re-engagement, so kudos to you for that. And I think what Peter's talking about is another good example of providing information in a way that's, I'm not going to call it dumbed down, but simplified to a point
Condensed,
where,
maybe.
Condensed, great word,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
To allow people to kind of re-engage in, okay, this is how the monies get spent, and this is why I'm in favor of the budget. Anything that helps do that, I think, can then re-engage, and then hopefully a year from now we have more people sitting in these seats. So, and not now, but at some point, I thought it'd be great, in case somebody's listening to this later, for someone to do just a quick split of our town budget, because I think sometimes people think that the budget we're discussing today is the mass amount of the money spent, which is not the case at all. So between education, Cumberland County, and our town budget, it would be great for someone just to say, X percent goes here, X percent goes here, and X percent goes here, because I think it's a really good clarification of where our collective taxpayer dollars go. That's a helpful thing to have. Thank you.
I can tell you this, the town portion of its total budget is about 25%. 75% is the school and the county. And in fact, when your tax bills do come out, it does break that out for you as well. So that's there. And I guess I just do want to make one other comment as far as some of the other things that have been said. You know, the fact that there's changes and whatnot that occur to the information that we get during the budget cycle is nothing new. It has happened every single year. In the 29 years I was on the budget committee, it happened. In the 9 years I've been on the select board, it happens. Things change. It's a dynamic item that's going on as it goes on. So it's nothing that was totally different this year than has been in the years past. We ask for, you know, the committees ask for some changes. Those go back in. Those come back to us as changes. You know, I'll put it this way, it's not quite as bad as sitting up in Augusta, where we'll be sitting there in the middle of the session and we're getting updates on an item that we're discussing at the time. So it's not quite that bad. But the fact is, it's a dynamic document because we ask for changes, we want, additional information that may be asked for, so there is information that comes in. So, and there's a lot of give and take that occurs in that short amount of time. So to say that this was something absolutely new this year, no, that's not right.
Yeah, in reference to Brian and Ralph's comments, I'd just say this. Yes, absolutely. The major portion of the budget for the town, or the cost to the town, is not the operating budget for the town administration and services. What I would tell you is, in deference to what I believe Brian was trying to say, is that of that 100%. The greatest influence that our community can have and our taxpayers can have is over that 25%, which is one of the reasons for these meetings. It's one of the reasons that we vote on the warrant articles. Thank you.
Other questions on question K? Question L, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the Recreation Program Special Revenue Fund the amount of $198,500 for the administration of activities at the programs, and to allocate all revenues generated by the program operations to be recorded in and retained by the Recreation Programs Enterprise Fund. Questions on that?
like to stand here. Mary Ann Emmerich, 14 Levitt Road. I notice in every department there's a new line item, excuse me, that says department recognition. I'd like to know what that is. My quick addition is it's about 10,000 the budget. So if you could explain that, I'd like that.
Yeah, so that is, that was broken out because if the departments are doing something nice for their staff, maybe a lunch and learn, training. Some departments have kind of an end of the season barbecue get together. Those were being taken out of general supplies. So this is broken out of there to kind of show that transparency that there's monies being spent for their staff and some of those recognition type pieces. So that's why it's now broken out in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Questions on question L? Question M, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $578,840 for debt service. Questions on debt service? Question N, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $203,701 for the Raymond Village Library. On the library. Article or referendum Q, or O, excuse me, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $415,000 and move from abandoned or completed projects that have been carried forward in the CIP $135,623 for a total of $550,623 for the capital improvement program. Questions on the CIP?
So Brian Walker, Rolfe Road. I'm not sure if this is a good place to do it or not, but I think it would be. Can we get a sense of what our paving plan is over the next year to 3? And the reason I ask is, my guess is that all of us here have our pet places where there's potholes and edges of roads falling off. As a bicyclist, it's getting more and more dangerous. I was just curious if some of the major roads, and I would speak, for example, of the northern part of 121 and the part from the downhill slope from 85 down to Crescent or 2 that I'm very intimate with, and just to kind of find out if there is plans. And both of those I recognize are state roads, so, but I don't see the state trucks around a lot, so I'm going to ask here.
Nathan White, Raymond Public Works. Excuse me. This year we're going to pave Martin Heights. We got an overlay on Tower Road, Viola and Elizabeth, and I'm hoping to cover the first section of Raymond Hill Road, which would be from 85 to Valley Road. The state roads, 85, Egypt Road, and 121, are Category 4 road, which is about as low as you can get for minor collectors. The only way anything's going to get done to those outside of what they call a maintenance mix is if the town gets involved. The previous years we did 3 of these MPIs on 85 and 1 on 121, and we also did one on Main Street 3 years ago that did the sidewalks. In the future coming up, I'm planning on Egypt Road will be the next one that I'm going to ask for. The problem with these, they're going to have to be bonded. Egypt Road alone's a little over $1 million out of the town's 50% match. As far as the maintenance on the side of the roads for 85 and 121, we're constantly on DOT to get those taken care of. We've had to, the last 3 times, send our crew out to patch them to get them safe for the traffic. I don't disagree with you at all. The sections that have not been done by the town on 85 121 are horrible. So we are aware of it, and I stand on Randy Illian about once a week about it. But comes on deaf ears, I think. Going forward from that, we've got a program that we're implementing this summer that will give us a 5 to 10 year plan. Hope that answers your question.
Nathan, while you're up there, can you explain the sand situation too? Because I know
Winter Sand, the company we were purchasing it from at $5 a yard, sold to a new company. They went to $16 a yard. At this point, I've been unsuccessful finding anything cheaper than that. We tried a little bit through the winter last year from another company that was $14.50 a yard, and we ended up having to screen it before we put it in the building. So at this point, that's my biggest increase in my operating budget, is winter sand.
just a heads up for people for next year.
Question, excuse me. Question P, to see if the town will vote to carry forward any existing fund balances in the capital improvement program accounts, the healthcare reimbursement account, and the employee compensation account. Questions on to carry forward? Question Q, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $67,500 for the RTP micro van service.
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. I spoke to this at the first public hearing. So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that the warrant Article 19 be reworded such that it is inclusive of the RTP bus service as well, without requesting any change in the budgeted amount.
The motion is out of order because this is an informational meeting. It is not a
Voting meeting.
It is not a formal meeting, so no motions are accepted or no votes are taken at this meeting. This was publicized as an informational meeting, so that motion is out of order.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Chair. Based on that information, I guess my observation would be, were this an open town meeting, that within some parameters, a citizen can get up and make a motion to modify a warrant article. Is that correct?
Within certain parameters, yes, that is correct.
And thus, since what we have is a ballot that's secret ballot for the election or the adoption of these articles, that's out of order, and we can't do that.
Right.
Okay.
Because
So-
and the secondary reason is the absentee ballots have already been sent out. So if any modification would mean that different information is in the hands of one set of voters and a different set of voters.
Thank you for that explanation, and I did have that as well, because the reality of the situation is everything that's discussed here right now, because in a secret ballot, there is the option for balloting citizen ballots in advance through absenteeism, that a number of citizens in the town have already voted without really having heard a lot of this discussion. And that would not be the case in an in-person town meeting, because there is no absentee ballot option allowed. Just an observation. So I guess what I'd say is, since my motion is out of order, I would say that at the discussion at the first informational meeting, a public hearing on the warrant articles, there was some discussion about potentially looking into what the possibility for negotiations of the contract with the RTP mini van proposal was. And I'm just curious, is there any follow-up at this point in time in discussions with Mr. Kelly and with RTP, as far as the fact that not only would it be a great marketing tool for him to have a successful minivan service in the town, which he'd love to be able to export, I'm sure, to more of the towns along the Lakes Region corridor. But also the fact that this basically wouldn't cost him anything more than putting on the brakes in Raymond and stopping at a designated spot. So what occurred to me at our last discussion was that there was the potential that SelectBoard would contact RTP and say, hey, can we, in order for this to pass, can you just sweeten the pot at no expense to your own by simply including the bus stop in Raymond? And so I'm curious, is there an update on that?
There has not been any discussion with them yet. You know, that's not to say that if the article is approved, that, you know, those discussions, you know, say, okay, we're giving you, we've got $67,000 there. Can you stop in town too? You know, because, you know, I mean, there were the discussions on both sides that say, okay, this town is paying this much to have the bus stop there. Well, we're actually paying more, so would it be out of line for him to stop there too? So, you know, I would say it certainly would not be out of line when we do the agreement with them, just, you know, to have those discussions too.
Sure. So I would tell you that I'm loath to say this because I believe that we do need more in the way of public transportation for all of our citizens in the town. But without the inclusion of the bus line, I would recommend that this warrant article be voted down. Thank you.
I guess I'd like to speak to this too, is I had that conversation with Don Libby, and we talked about what we were looking for in our town, and I talked to him about, because he was aware of what happened in the past with us not voting on paying the amounts, but he even spoke at one of our public meetings that said, right now, the bus is not what Raymond needs. It's the individuals that can't get to the bus or get to the store or to their doctor's appointments. He says that's more of what the town needs, and then he says we can possibly build up from that. But he even from him being in this business, has publicly said. The other thing is, he said we can take them right into Wyndham, we can take them right into Casco. Also, he said there is a place in Falmouth that they're cutting out of their stops because there's not enough people there, so they're trying to condense the bus stops that they have there, so someone's not stopping. So it's not to say that it can't be looked at later, next year, whatever, or even after that Joe can talk to him, but that's how we came up with this.
Right?
So going back to the first meeting, this was brought up, and I spoke a little bit about utilization, and I respect Mr. Libby and his point of view about what Raymond needs. I don't know if he has self-serving reasons for saying that, whether he's a salesman when he said that. I will say at $12,000 for the bus and $67,500 for the microvan service. And the microvan service, for those who don't know, is you call RTP and they will come up and pick you up wherever you are and take you to where you want to go. My understanding is they try to combine those trips, so you have, it's not quite Uber, that there is certain, parameters as to what they can do, but it's a significant amount of money, whereas it doesn't work using this the RTP microvan to take you from your house in Raymond to a bus stop in Wyndham or Casco, then getting on the bus to go to a doctor's appointment in Portland, or to go on the people that I've been on the bus with, going to school, college, and the like, going to work, various different reasons, makes for a fairly cumbersome and long journey, which then starts to become problematic and makes Raymond a more difficult town to live in, which is, I think, in terms of attracting people to the town, makes it more difficult. I would urge, and I don't know if this I'm to Peter's point, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for or against this. I'm for the concept, but I'm not sure this is the right execution. I would have much rather seen something that talked about the bus first. I hope that because it's in there as a RTP microvan service, that it doesn't get in the way of Joe, you talking to them about how can they go about doing this to include bus pickup and stop in Raymond, and whether that's a reallocation or however that's done. But I would really urge for having a bus stop, and for two reasons. One is because I think it's good for the town of Raymond. And the second piece of it, which I think is just as important, is Raymond being one of the communities in the Lakes region that is participating in something that is beneficial for the entire Lakes region. I think what's good for the Lakes region is good for Raymond and vice versa. And I think it's a missed opportunity, and I think it's been a bit of a black eye on the part of Raymond to year after year vote down the bus while our neighboring towns have been doing it on arguments like, well, you know, somebody going to Casco is going further, they should be paying more. There was a lot of minutia. We've missed the opportunity to be part of a larger community outside just the town's borders. Thank you.
Don?
Yes, I don't want to reiterate everything that's been said by Brian and Peter, but I do want to say that I agree with that assessment that Brian just provided. To me, the bus is the baseline, and that's where we should start. I don't disagree that this shuttle service could be a good extra layer, you know, gilding that lily, if in fact there is a significant number of people who cannot get to the bus stop. I don't know what level of study was actually done to confirm or deny that supposition. To me, it's an anecdote, and you know, so we've kind of, you know, gone to a higher order magnitude service before we even are participants in the base level service. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that Raymond not participating is viewed very negatively by our neighbors in the Lakes region and probably throughout the quarter. And you know, it's a good faith thing, and if it benefits a few people, I say so be it. If it's not there at all, then how in the world is it ever going to be something that will grow and develop over time? It's a de minimis amount of money. I don't know why we waste time arguing on such things. I mean, Brian said it well, I think, when he said that it, you know, it speaks to us as a community and what we stand for. And right now, what we end up standing for is it does not give us a very good look, I guess, with our neighboring communities. So I personally believe this is a wrong approach at this time, and I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Bill?
Bill Blood, 7 Mill Street. I just want to make a comment. My understanding from the discussion with RTP and my past experience with dealing with RTP myself is this bus that they're going to have in the town is basically to be able to get people to locations that they don't have transportation. It could be elderly, it could be people that don't have cars, that bus service is basically to get them to the locations that they need to get to, as well as the bus that would take them to Portland, if I'm correct.
The bus, you mean? The bus or the transportation?
The microbus.
Microbus.
The microbus, yes.
Microbus gets you to a bus if they have to go into Portland.
If they need to go to Portland, but
Yes.
also if they need to go to Wyndham, go to
Yes.
Casco, or wherever. It's a means for people who have no transportation to get to different locations.
Yes.
Not, you know, I'm hearing this mixed information from others that they think that, you know, that amount of money that's being set aside for that is you know, an expense that, you know, shouldn't be there when we already have what's the percentage, like 60% of the people in Raymond that are 60 and older, 50 years and older, and there's a lot of people I know that they just don't have transportation. I used to use the bus all the time getting to and from Portland when I was working in Portland, and you know, the RTP bus when it stopped in Raymond, but if I had to go to Wyndham or Casco, I'd be fine with that. So I think the priority would be to get people to the locations that do not have transportations from their homes, to be able to get around Raymond or Casco, Wyndham, wherever.
No, and one of the issues that we found out doing this too is, yes, there is a population that does take the bus, but there is also a big population that cannot get to the bus.
Right.
And we found through Age Friendly that we have a volunteer and her husband that are picking these people up, driving them to their appointments, driving them to the grocery store and stuff like that. So one of the things that I know Joe did is we checked on what it would cost to have our own van. It would have to be handicap accessible. You'd have to pay for a driver. You'd have to pay for the insurance. You'd have to do all the insurance on the person and on the vehicle. You'd have to, there's a lot involved. So with the RTP, they have the driver, if something breaks down, they have a whole fleet that would come in and replace that. They have the person that has a background checks, has been trained, has the insurance on them. So technically in that way, I think it was just for one vehicle, it was over $100,000 just to do it. So I understand the front line as far as getting the people there with their cars, but we also have to get the people that are not there and get them down, and the age-friendly people and people that can't afford a vehicle or just is not comfortable, I guess, enough to drive from here to there for whatever reason.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also the discussion of the possibility of, kind of like after the fact renegotiating, is it possible for that amount of money, a portion of it being used to be able to get the bus to Raymond? I don't know if I'm correct on that.
Well, I guess that's what's being asked here, and that's something that Joe can talk to Don Libby about and work on a negotiation on that. So, including possibly both of them.
I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm voting yes on it.
I mean, in the discussions that we had with Mr. Libby was that, it's a program that's, he wants to work with us on as far as how the thing can work best. So if it turns out that it's, that it's being used more one way than another, then it can be adjusted that way. If it's being, so there is, there's flexibility on his side to work with us on there to see how the program is going to work best for us. And if that means that, we have to make some mid-course corrections, and then mid-course corrections would get made.
We can go month to month is what it is, and we can cancel if it's not working. And I know Deb Tarr, our Age Friendly, has already people, and she's getting it out there now that could use this. And so what she'll do is she'll keep a log and find out the numbers and see how we are on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Brian?
Sorry, I don't want to belabor, but just a possible problem-solving idea. I know that we can do it month by month, and I would guess that we would do it for at least, say, 3 months or something like that to find out. I'm hoping for at least that. And by the way, I'm totally in favor of the micro van. I don't really want it to be an either or. I want it to be an and. What if, in the negotiations of how payment occurred, there's a guarantee for 1 year on the bus so that 12,000 is allocated, and then no matter what happens, so then you take the remaining balance and you say, okay, we take that across the 12 months, and if for some reason at the end of 3 months we say this just really isn't working because it's not being utilized, or for whatever reason, what RTP would keep would be the 12,000 plus the 3 months of that remaining balance, so that they would do well. That would, I think, motivate them to try to make sure that both systems are working together. Because you make some really good points, Therese, about getting people who don't have a car, don't have a way to get to the bus. It would give them the option of getting to the bus. One of my concerns is I don't think it's not really quite like a regular program that those buses are going to be kind of on demand. And as you know, the buses only run a limited number of times a day. I believe there's 4 round trips. So maybe there's a possibility of saying, look, we'll give you the 12 for the bus. If you include that in our overall amount of 67.5, and then I can't do the math. Peter, if you think you have no math brain, I've got 0 net math brain. But take 67.5 minus 12,000, whatever's left, divide it by 12, and say that's what we'll use. If it's not working out after 5 months or 6 months on the micro van, that's the amount that will be, you will still end up with more money at the end of the year.
Right, and
Just a thought.
that's something that would be with Joe to negotiate that out, yes.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping.
And I think too, just because it's the rec part of it, and one of the things was a concern, and I know Frank McDermott had even agreed with this too, is we had somebody that was a volunteer that was driving. And we do not want an insurance issue. We do not want an accident happening. We don't want any of that. And so to keep everybody safe, to keep everybody above board like that, but to also reach more people. But yeah, that's something that Joe can negotiate and talk to. Dawn is great to talk to. Dawn Libby really is. And so see if we can get a plan. But I do know that Deb Tarr wanted to be able to, because she's under rec, is be able to give it some time. She is going, the other thing that was said too, Don Libby said that he will give postcards to us to put in everybody's mailboxes, send it to everybody, so the word gets out more about it, so we can promote it, and if it doesn't work, then yeah. Yeah.
Brian,
I
we
hear
can
what
get
you're saying on the
updates
end.
too. We can, as we, it was me, Brian, sorry.
This is deep.
We can get updates too, month by month, and kind of present that to kind of look at it as it's going on during next fiscal year. So we can give those updates and course correct if we have to, or renegotiate as we get that information.
Don?
Yes, thank you, Don Willard, 149 Spiller Hill Road. I'm not sure I agree with this whole issue of negotiating. Based on the way this warrant article is written, it's specific as to what the money should be used for. And I think to go after the fact back and negotiate with them, even if it were legal to appropriate this money in that way, is kind of small potatoes. My suggestion would be that the Board of Selectmen decide to take the money for the bus, the baseline money for the bus, out of the contingency fund or some other source that they have discretionary control over, to say, give us your best price for a microbus service, and they do that, and then you go back and you say, well, we're going to negotiate with you, and we want you to take this actual amount that is known, the 12,000 or whatever that's known for the bus, and our neighbors pay for the bus in that way, and we want you to wrap it into this other thing that we've asked you for your best price on. I think that's bad negotiation, bad business, and is contrary to the warrant article, and I don't know if it's even legal to do that. So I would say, don't do that. That really is a bad look, really bad look. Let's do the bus and do it from contingency or however we need to fund it. And then I would be 100% in favor of this, because all I don't know is there's been enough study to determine the need. I think the concept, as Bill has pointed out, Brian's pointed out, Peter's pointed out, I think the concept's great and fine. And but to use the minibus to go to Wyndham Stop or Casco Stop, come on, people. Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
Other questions on Article Q? Question R, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $13,250 for provider agencies, $1,500 for the Crescent Lake Watershed Association, $750 for the Lake Region Chamber of Commerce, $10,000 for the Thomas Pond Dam restoration, and $1,000 to be used at the town manager's discretion. Questions? Question S, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the total sum of $2,221,180 from estimated non-property tax revenues to reduce the property tax commitment, together with all categories of funds which may be available from the federal government or any other sources. Questions? Question T, to see if the town will vote to accept certain state funds as provided by the Maine State Legislature during the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025, and any other funds provided by any other entities, including but not limited to municipal revenue sharing, local road use assistance, emergency management assistance, snowmobile registration money, homestead exemption, tree growth reimbursement, general assistance reimbursement, veterans exemption reimbursement, business equipment tax exemption, reimbursement, state grants, and/or other funds. That's the, we'll take money from anyone. Questions? Question U, to see if the town will vote to authorize the use of town employees and/or town-owned equipment or independent contractors hired by the town for maintenance on private roads in special and certain circumstances wherein the public interest. This is the one that it's more done from the emergency standpoint, that if an emergency vehicle has to get down a road that's a private road and it's unplowed, for the safety of the emergency vehicles, we will allow that to be done. It also comes into play on the school side for special needs issues. But it is not to say that town will maintain and work on private roads. Questions? Question V, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from undesignated fund balance $642,688 for the employee benefits liability.
568.
Oh, sorry. 642,568. Questions? Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. I just think it's important for the public to realize that sum of money is not really going to be allocated other than to just cover an issue that's usually called in budgetary standards as an unfunded liability. So there's no expectation that a significant portion of that is going to be paid out every year, and every year it will decrease.
That is correct. Charlie?
Yes, Charles Levitt, 14 Levitt Road. I'm the other brother. I'd like to ask the town manager, could you explain what an undesignated fund balance is?
Undesignated fund balance?
Yes.
Have all the general fund monies that are not expended in a fiscal year get rolled over into a general surplus.
So in essence, and it's such an august body here today with chairman of the select board here, who was a former chairman of budget finance and former town manager here. My question would be, is the undesignated fund balance money that from surplus that is really overtaxation of the citizens of Raymond from previous years?
So you're asking if the money's not expensed,
well,
if that is not zero-based budgeting, is that what you're asking for?
No, I'm asking is, how do you generate an undesignated fund balance? Where does that revenue come from to generate a surplus?
If town departments are not expended out of that account, they would have a positive net balance in their overall accounts and it gets rolled over. Yeah.
So that account is funded by the citizens of the town of Raymond in their taxes.
So let me see if I can answer.
Please.
It can come from two areas. It can come from taxes, and if you have an unspent thing, it can also come from unanticipated revenues. Right. Either you had excise tax that was higher than anticipated, you had other areas that came in that exceeded original estimates on that, so that the simple answer is yes. In general, it's generally looked at as, yeah, that's that money that was raised by taxes that wasn't spent. But it can be, it is a combination of the two. It can be from that standpoint because something didn't get, something didn't get spent over and it wasn't a carry forward item, then it reverts back into the general fund and it falls to the undesignated surplus. It also gives us that buffer in regards to meeting the 15% that we need in order to, which is important, is towards maintaining our bond rating, because having adequate reserves there helps keep that, which helps us keep that AAA rating, so that if we start to fall below those, numbers, then that's going to affect our bond rating, which is going to hurt us on the borrowing side.
And then it's also affected by the commitment that's made in September, correct? Which happens after the town meeting, after the vote, whether it's an open town meeting or a ballot. That commitment, generally, the assessor, the contract assessor, gives the select board a range of where it could be if it generated no more money from taxes, and a higher range of how much, and typically that's what I understood usually is $100,000 per nickel of the tax rate. So to get to my point, when we say that we're going to use $700,000 from the undesignated fund balance to lower this year's tax rate per $1,000, we're actually saying to the citizens, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Willard, because we've had this discussion many times before, again with Chairman Bruno in
Please address
towns
comments
past.
to the chair, not to the,
I'm just making a comment to the august body here assembled, including, and I'm sorry, Karen, for not including you as the present chair of the Budget Finance Committee, that we're saying to the citizens of the town of Raymond, we're taking your old tax money that we overtaxed you on, and we're going to bring it forward this year, $700,000, to lower the tax rate so that now it's $700,000, where years ago it was $100,000, $200,000. So it appears to the average citizen like myself that we're, as it was said before, it's kind of like a gimmick of saying to the people of the town of Raymond, we're keeping your taxes low, but we're keeping your taxes low based on the taxes we already took from you from years past.
as I say, some of that fund is from there, some of it is from increased revenues from one, and we also still have, there's still some funding that's in there from the settlement that we did on the environmental issue. So it's not all increase, it's not all direct money that came.
And as I recall, excuse me, Rolf, but the settlement that we made on the lakefront property violation actually was a wash. The town of Raymond lost money on that deal. It wasn't an adequate deal. We ended up paying more in legal and fees and ongoing commitment to have to watch that lake frontage. So in a way, bringing that up is, again, what we might call a red herring. It's a diversionary tactic to the fact that the town of Raymond overtaxes every year its citizens on the property tax in order to then say the following year, aren't we doing a great job with keeping the budget down and the tax rate down? So that's all my comment. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you.
Right.
Charlie, good to see you.
Oh, same here, Brian. Sorry, you were on Budget Finance also.
Yeah, right. This is a matter of perspective. I'm sorry, I cannot not comment. I see it, and it's just a difference of opinion. I see it as making sure we have the contingencies when we need them. And I think the legal issues that came up that we needed to fund are a perfect example of no one expected that. We needed it. We had it. We litigated it. We were successful in that litigation. I see it as good town department managers managing their budget and being frugal and returning the funds that aren't needed. And that ultimately then the town returns them when appropriate so that we can keep our AAA bond rating and keep our our debt down and keep the leveraging that we have to do. So just a difference of opinion.
Peter Levitt, 2 Lever Road, the other brother. So I guess my point would be this one, that Ralph is correct, and Moody's bond ratings are important, and they are set by, in large part, by what the town has in reserve. It demonstrates how fiscally responsible they are. That being said, Moody's sets the range at 5 to 15%. What the town has elected to do is set it at the higher end rather than the lower end. And unfortunately, what happens with undesignated fund balances is that, yes, and I agree with Ralph, some of it that comes from other than the taxpayer. But ultimately, what can be used in the undesignated fund balance, as I understand it, is for emergencies, for needed, emergent needed equipment. So if you were to take $700,000 of the undesignated fund balance and put it towards a fire truck, wouldn't that not decrease the need to bond it and pay interest on it? Because that's my understanding of how an undesignated fund balance can be used. So being overly preoccupied with what our Moody's says we are as far as a stellar fiscal municipality, double A bonding, and not that bad in my understanding. Even an A bonding is not that bad if in fact what it allows you to do is reduce having the debt service on having to go to bonding on everything. Thank you.
Still Charles Levitt, 14 Levitt Road. Just as a simple civics lesson, anytime the voters in the town of Raymond and the need of this government is in search of additional funds, you hold a special town meeting. So we'll hold a special town meeting for a comprehensive plan that should have been included in this meeting, and it's not being included. So we're going to come back at some weird time, maybe in July when no one's around, or August, to approve a comprehensive plan that probably reasonably could have been included in this discussion. However, if we need a fire truck, if we need legal assistance to pursue, we have a special town meeting. You want the community to come back? Let the community come back and talk about it. Let's not use gimmicks like the commitment and the undesignated fund balance to fund the growth of this government in places where the community isn't having input. If this had been a regular town meeting right now and it was a Saturday, how many more people would have been in this room? Maybe 100, maybe 150? How many voters are there in the town of Raymond? 2,000? 3,800. So, and I see someone who I've had major disagreements with over the years, Frank McDermott over here, who came up during comprehensive plan meeting and said, we have to come up with a new form of being able to engage this community. And he thought of a hybrid system. And I think it was Mr. Meister in his article in the Windham Beagle came back and said, we need to come back with a new form of getting citizen input. And the way you're going to get that citizen input is making this the informational town meeting on a Saturday, not on a Tuesday, well before the election, so the whole community can come. You can have childcare, you can have the Lions Club doing the coffee, just like we used to do in the old gym down at the end of this building. And then have the ballot vote 10 days later, where you have the most representation of the people after they've had a chance to come together in a community setting and learn about how their government operates or doesn't operate efficiently. Thank you.
That's for a different meeting, not.
Questions on question B?
What he's doing. Somebody ought to tell him. Don't shut me up.
I told him this. He said, don't.
Okay, question W. See if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to enter into a lease purchase agreement with the amount not to exceed $1,600,000, not including interest and/or other legal fees, on such terms as they deem advisable for the purpose of purchasing a new stock ladder truck, and raise and appropriate an amount not to exceed $187,348.08 for the payment due for fiscal year 25-26 and for 10-year lease. Questions on the ladder truck? Question why? The next series of questions are land use ordinance articles. So if
Jason back there.
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road, I asked this question at the last public hearing, so I'm going to ask it again. Why is Article 26 left blank?
Article 26 would have been the comprehensive plan, but the edits were not completed in time to get ready, so that's why it does not appear on this on there.
Okay, so I guess I have a comment and 2 comments. One is that recently a Select Board member described the Comprehensive Plan Committee as a failed committee. And my only question would, in response to his comment, was I'd ask, compared to what? So that'd be my first question as far as failed committees or boards. Secondly, I guess I'd just ask informationally, this current meeting will air before June 10th on our television network?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Question why? Shall Article 4, Section 2B, dealing with the number of copies, and Article 5, Section 2B, dealing with number of copies, Article 6, Section 2A, number of copies, Article 7, Section 2B, number of copies of the subdivision ordinance as adopted May 21, 1984, and amended through June 4, 2019, and Articles 10.3A.3B, applications, and Article 10.4A3, submission requirements for the land use ordinance as adopted May 21, 1994, and amended through June 11, 2024, be further amended by adding the underscored language and removing the language in the strikeout text as shown in addendum number 2. Jason, you want to just give a highlight on?
It's a tongue twister.
On what that change does?
Yeah, Jason Williamson, Code Enforcement. Really, it's just kind of, we get a lot of copies. I think this kind of is just dated. Now everything's digital, so we don't need so many copies anymore. I'm just looking at more PDFs to reduce paperwork and clutter, really.
So it's just dealing with the number of copies that have to be submitted.
Correct.
Questions on question why? Question Z, shall Article 10.3A10A, expiration of approval of the land use ordinance as adopted May 21, 1994, and amended through June 11, 2024, be further amended by adding the underscored language and removing the language in the strikeout text as shown in addendum 3.
Jay's just going to live over there.
This one is just clarifying, making it clear from when someone's approved, how long they have to start, how much of an extension they can get, and when it has to be finished, just clarifying the language.
Questions on question Z? Question double A, shall Article 5.5 footnote 3, street design standards of the Town of Raymond Street Ordinance adopted May 18, 2002 and amended through June 2, 2015 be further amended by adding the underscored language and removing the language in strikeouts as in addendum number 4?
This is just to clarify that the reviewing authority is always the planning board in this situation, so just removing the reviewing authority and changing that to planning board seemed to make sense, so it's obvious.
Questions on AA? Question AB, shall Article 6.3.E.3 Appeals Procedure of the Land Use Ordinance is adopted May 21, 1994 and adopted through June 11, 2024 be further amended by adding the underscored language and removing the language and strike out text as in addendum 5.
Yeah, so this one, we noticed there was a discrepancy between what our ordinance said and what the state law was, so this was to bring this into line with state guidelines.
Jay, can I ask you a question on something?
Yeah.
Just regarding what the state says and what the town says. Do you guys find anywhere that your home rule overrides the state?
This situation would make it more lenient, so I think we might be able to be stricter. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that to see if we could allow longer. A lot of these things, they follow the state guidelines. So if we told someone they had 16 days, but they really only had 7, there could be a real issue there legally, I think, where we told them they had more time than they really had, because we wouldn't want someone in an appeals process to come at day 8 or 9.
Right.
We tell them that, yes, it's good, and then it goes, and then the state's like, no, you should, that was no good, and we're kind of in a situation where we, there could be like a estoppel type of situation, I think, or.
So you work pretty much hand in hand with the state then, so you guys are even as far as where they go, the information?
Well, I've only been through a couple appeals, so I haven't seen how they all work, but we saw a potential issue if we had told someone 16 days, and then they had submitted it, and then when we submit any paperwork to the state, potentially an issue there with how the violation would be handled.
Okay.
From a general standpoint, from home rule, you can make a ruling that is more restrictive but not less restrictive.
Right. That's how we interpret it.
So in this case, we would have been less restrictive.
Right.
We would have, so the state rule would have had to take precedence.
Correct, and we were concerned about their rights too. We wouldn't want to, everybody has a right to appeal, so giving them the correct information, if that appeal was to go up to the state level, that we would want to make sure that was all done properly.
Okay, thank you.
Questions on AB? Question AC, shall Article 6.2.B.1 shore and road frontage and Article...
Everybody's moving it. There we go.
Okay, shall Article 6.2.B.1 shore and road frontage and Article 6.4E piers, docks, wharves, bridges, and other structures and uses extending over and below normal high water line of water bodies and within wetlands of the Town of Raymond Shoreland Zoning Ordinance is adopted May 21, 1994, and amended through June 11, 2024, be further amended by adding the underscored language in the diagrams and removing the language in the strikeout text.
Yes, so this... Question first, or? Yeah, so this was a recommendation from the town planner to make the language more clear about that you would need the same frontage, the 225 feet on the road and the 225 feet on the shore. He felt that there was a little bit of ambiguity there, so it was just to make that obvious, but...
Brian?
Brian Walker, Rolfe Road. Jason, you may have just answered this. Is this, if it's for clarification, that's, I guess, the answer. I just was wondering, is this fixing a problem that we're seeing out there in the environment or around our towns in terms of people putting out massive docks or something? And are people subdividing to a place where they have a little entrance and then they take the 225 feet? So I was just curious whether we're fixing problems or anticipating problems with these things.
Are you talking about as far as the dock configuration part? So that was just to make it clear. There's a lot of docks in town. There's probably a lot of docks that are not conforming. So we just trying to kind of encourage people to see a visual and understand what is allowed and what's not allowed.
I have a question for you, Lee, please. Thanks. Would there be lots grandfathered from this? I mean, I know there's a lot of lots around the lake that are 100 foot, for example.
Oh, those, right, yes. A legally non-conforming lot that has frontage will be allowed a dock. This is for new lots. A buildable lot is supposed to have 225 feet of road frontage, but we have plenty of lots that are legally existing lots that are buildable. So this is for new lots going forward. We don't allow any lots to be created that wouldn't meet those dimensional requirements anyways. So any new lot created now presumably would be allowed a dock as long as because they would have the 225 feet. There are some with right-of-ways that predate these rules, so they are grandfathered in. And then there are some that are just small lots around Thomas Pond, for example, and parts of Raymond Pond, and they have docks and they're allowed.
That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
11 to Levitt Road, and as far as dock configurations, I don't know if it's this article or another one, but there was a diagram in there that showed what would be allowed for a configuration and the like. Just my understanding of this, and it may be corrected by the code enforcement officer, but I do attend a lot of the planning board meetings as well, and it seems like that part of this issue came to them from the Zoning Board of Appeals, who had to deal with an issue, and that the language in the ordinance was not putting them in the best position. I have some amount of experience on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I can tell you that, like with almost any of the ordinance committees, they have very limited type of authority. People in general seem to have the misconception that, that we're telling you exactly what you can and can't do with your property, and that it's arbitrary, and that we have very broad powers, when in fact just the opposite is true. So we are very, very dependent on the language, meaning a zoning board of appeals or a planning board. So that's I believe how this issue came before the planning board, and that the configurations basically do comply with the state guidelines. So I believe we're in pretty solid area there. One other thing I might mention as far as ordinances are concerned is that there was a discussion early on at Budget Finance Committee regarding somehow dedicating a portion of the dollars from basically the settlement on Sebago Lake to a fund dedicated to legal issues, especially involving shoreland, because I believe what I heard from the town contract planner as far as the incident on Sebago Lake in Raymond, it's not a question of if going forward. So I just make that comment.
Yeah, the dock rules are mostly state rules, and we're just kind of administering the state's rules. We're tasked with that, so we always have to make sure those dock rules are, because our jurisdiction, there's overlapping jurisdiction here. The state owns the waters, but we have to administer the docks going in. So, and people come to us with a dock configuration, so we have to look at their dock configuration, okay it, and then when it's done, they're supposed to call us and we do a final inspection. The trouble is they come out every year. So we're not checking docks every year, and we don't have the manpower to go and check everybody's stock every year it goes in. So the next year it goes in, we're relying on them to put it in the same way it was the year before. Whether it does or not, that's another question.
Just one more comment regarding that last comment, and that's the fact that absolutely, I don't think in a town this size, given the amount of a shorefront we have, we could have a big enough code enforcement office to be able to really enforce every single ordinance. My experience of 25 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I've said this before, is generally the Zoning Board of Appeals or the code enforcement officer being contacted by a neighbor. I know that it kind of makes you a little bit squeamish when you think in terms of, well, is this communism, that the neighbors are turning in neighbors? But I will tell you that as far as enforcement of ordinances, especially involving the shorefront, 99% of my experience is it's due to a neighbor basically seeing a dock go in that doesn't conform. And the first thing they do is call a code enforcement officer or go to the ordinance, and then they take out their measuring tape, and then you have an issue with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then eventually, in some cases, you end up in Superior Court. Thanks.
Other questions on AC? Question AD. Shall Article 12.2, terms defined of the land use ordinance as adopted May 21, 1994 and amended through June 11, 2024, be further amended by adding the underscore language and removing the language and strikeout in text 7?
So this one was more clarification, citizens initiative for the solar. There was some wording in there. We were just concerned about some of the legally existing commercial operations, thinking that they couldn't put solar on just to cover their energy needs. The intent of I believe the intent of the ordinance was to stop commercial scale, large-scale operations from which are for-profit selling energy to the grid. And we just want to make sure that some of the smaller commercial operations that are legally existing in other areas or even commercial areas knew that they could still put solar panels up to zero out their energy usage. And we just wanted to make sure that that wasn't, there was no confusion on that one.
Questions on AD?
David Brown from 91 Tenny Hill Road again. And I do have a question about that, because that was something I highlighted, was accessory, in item A, accessory solar energy systems may, but are not required to, be designed to achieve net zero consumption for private use. And I would just like some clarification on why that language was necessary to be in the ordinance.
I don't believe the intent was to say that they could profit from it. I think it was just not everybody's going to have enough solar panels to offset all their costs. But that the intent of the net zero is that even if someone produced more energy than they used, they wouldn't get paid back for it. That's a whole different tier, I believe. With a homeowner, I don't believe can put solar panels on their house and get money back. So it's really for commercial scale. I'm speaking for a lot of other people right now because a lot of people's work went into wording the ordinance. But I believe that design is just so people can design a system that does produce more, so they can ensure that they're not paying for electricity, but they're not able to get money back from it. Does that make sense?
No, because otherwise it doesn't get captured.
So the feeling apparently was that if we didn't say that, that it would raise a question, that it would make it look like if someone's making more energy than they need, it would seem like they're trying to make it to sell it. So you're just clarifying that it's okay, kind of like it's okay to make a little extra, and you're not going to trigger that issue.
Correct, because it's hard to exactly tell how much power you're going to need, how much, because both are variable. You know, how much sun you're going to get, and then so people are going to oversize their system, the thought is. So they have that ability to oversize it slightly so that they can guarantee they don't pay for it.
Other questions on AD? Question AE. Shall Section 3, Administration, Section 6, Compliance, and Section 7, New Construction and Subdivision of the Town of Raymond Assessing Ordinance, adopted May 15th, 1997, and amended through June 5, 2018, and be further amended by adding the underscored language and removing the language and strike out as an addendum number 8.
This one is just for addressing, for size, changing the size of the numbers from 3 to 4 inches, I believe. This one was from the fire department. I don't know if you want to speak to this. Or... Yeah, I think it's just numbers, right? The size? Yeah, so it's just the size of the numbers to make them easier to see. Some of these camps are set back from the road quite a ways, so it's not always easy to tell what number of houses, especially when they're tight together, and it's just to help with fire and rescue, I think, mostly.
Peter Levitt, 2 Lever Road. So I guess my question is, because I think I've heard it both ways, is this retroactive to all houses or only new construction? And what would the reporting mechanism be? My sense was, and this was discussed at the last meeting, that it would basically be the responsibility of fire or rescue, or maybe code enforcement, that if they went to find a certain location in the town and found that it was not easy to identify it, that's how you would address the issue. Thanks.
Bruce Tupper, Fire Rescue Chief. Yes and no is my answer. So I'll be clear as mud. So as we find past addresses that are illegible, hidden behind bushes, they were on a tree at this height and now they're 30 feet in the air and we can't find them, things like that, which is what we find all the time. We still have about a 50% non-compliance rate in addressing, and it's going to continue down that road despite all our efforts, unfortunately. But as we find them, what we do is we talk with the person who owns the property and say, you know, we were delayed, blah, blah, blah. We have numbers that we give out as part of a program through our association. We will continue that program. So there really is no reason for someone not to have the appropriate address markings on their house. It's just they don't think of it, because to you, your house number is right where you put it. And that's the discussion I have often with people. It is right on the tree where I put it. I see it every day, right? I live there. The problem is that I don't live there and I'm trying to find you in an emergency. So we just have to do this as part of an educational effort. Getting all our new ones up to par as they come online, it really is important to have that increase in size on the numbers. My eyesight's not getting better as I age, and therefore I don't find things as easy as I used to, and the rest of the crew is in the same boat. And we're out at night, we're in storms, we're in inclement weather, etc. So to have this clarify some of that, and then we are working together as codes and fire rescue to make sure as we find things that we give that educational component and try to get people to put the right addressing markings up so that we can find them easier in the future, should they need us. Is that everything?
Other questions on AE? That concludes all the articles. Ryan?
We are about to lose 2 of our longest serving members on the Select Board, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. I don't always agree with you guys. You don't always agree with me. That's okay. That's the way democracies work. We debate things. We bring things up. Your years of service are amazing. The number of hours that you've given to this town are amazing, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
No other comments? We will close the meeting, and thank you all for attending.